Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Open Wounds Podcast. Today, my guest is Shahd. She is a fashion designer. She owns a company that helps refugee women, if I understand that correctly, with humanitarian. They teach them to sew and produce fashion products, and then if I understood it correctly, the income is given back to the refugee women that are working in. It's Blue Meets Blue is the company. So welcome to the podcast, Shahid.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So if you want to share with the listeners and the viewers a little bit about like what made you want to start a fashion brand that was giving back to women that were refugees or were, trying to, as far as I understand, is it mostly Syrian women? Is that correct?
So I am the daughter of Syrian immigrants. And so in 2011, there was a civil war that had happened in Syria where people were protesting because they wanted democracy in their country. And there was a dictatorship at the time and a lot of crackdowns, which led to a lot of people becoming refugees, leaving Syria because, they were forced out of their homes. Whether it was because their homes were bombed and they no longer had homes, the situation was no longer safe. So a lot of people were leaving the country, and as a result, we were seeing a lot of refugees coming to the US and obviously a lot of countries around the world. But this hit home for me because my summers, I grew up every year going to Syria where I would see extended family and cousins and grandparents. And the country for me was, this symbolic representation of identity and belonging and family and reunions and fun and birthdays and, all of the good stuff. So it was very devastating to not be able, it's almost like we lost that connection very abruptly and not be able to go back. And at the time I had finished up my graduate work in international psychology, and I really wanted to find a way to help. Um, and I was interested in fashion, so I wanted to kind of bridge this gap between fashion and psychology and do something that somewhat resembled art therapy, but without calling it art therapy. So that's kind of where Blue Meets Blue came about. This was 2015 in Chicago. And our tagline is where fashion meets humanitarianism. So there were so many things that we had wanted to do with this clothing line. We wanted it to be a slow fashion clothing line, which meant that we were not producing every season. We did not have inventory. A lot of our items are made to order.
Mhm.
And this is intentional because we're trying to reduce waste. And then it's a luxury clothing line. So the clothing is more elevated, but it means something to the people that are making it. It means something
Yeah.
to the people that are purchasing it. So it's a very intentional, sustainable kind of production. And then I also really wanted to focus on this art therapy bit. A lot of times when we would sit together with these women, they would be, as they were sewing, as they were using their hands, we know that a lot of trauma healing, you try to do something that is physical so that you can focus on
Oh,
healing through, creative arts or whatever exercise. So while they were sewing or beading or doing embroidery, they would have these very difficult conversations. But it just felt very natural. And part of it was because everybody in the room kind of went through a similar experience. So they felt like they were talking to, people that understood. They were
yeah.
speaking in their own language. And it was just a safe space. So they were able to have these difficult conversations. And very quickly, you saw this healing element as a result, right? This meaning making that came because of that. And a lot of times in trauma research, we also know that, for example, when talk therapy is advocated for, and I'm not saying that talk therapy is the only type of
Right.
therapy, but when talk therapy is advocated for, the point of talk therapy is that you are able to make meaning of the situation that you had been through.
Mm,
If you repeat it enough, if you talk about it enough, you're able to have this coherent timeline of that trauma. You're able to know what the
Right.
beginning was, the end was, and that signals to your body that you're safe now because you know the beginning and the end, and it ended, right?
Right.
So at some level, this was serving that purpose. And I loved it because I saw the conversations when we had started were a lot more urgent, a lot more, you know, a lot of depression, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. And then as we progressed, by year two, there was a lot more, they had settled, kids were in school. They were now making an income where they were able to help their family. So it was a really beautiful, evolution of events, if you will. And that's a little bit about Blue Meets Blue. So we actually had to stop in 2019, and this was because of a multitude of reasons, but
Hmm.
mainly because I was moving to another state. I moved to
Oh,
Florida. And then soon after, I had a baby. And then soon after, COVID hit. And even though I had wanted to restart in Florida, I was worried about getting people together in the same room,
yeah.
and it just didn't make sense. But this year, 2025, the Syrian people became free. Syria became a free country. The dictatorship fell, which was amazing. And I was inspired to restart the collection, because I went to Syria this past summer
Oh,
and
nice.
I was able to source the fabric from Syria. So it kind of was this full circle
Wow.
moment because now we're using the fabric from Syria and the refugees that are over here are working on the fabric. So it's a really exciting moment for us, and we are relaunching in January.
That's so exciting. I mean, it's really hitting like a nerve on what we're seeing right now with Gaza and Palestine, where you're
Yeah.
seeing all these people where
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, when it first started, I was like, oh, we're going to have an influx of refugees. We're just going to have tons of
Mhm.
refugees. And then that's not what we're seeing. But it is true. People are losing their sense of connection and identity, right, to their homeland.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's another, you brought up a really good point when we're talking about trying to help people who are not English speaking primarily.
Mhm.
Largely the therapeutic model is,
Mhm.
delivered by Americans who speak
Mhm.
English. I think it would be
Yeah.
very difficult to find a Syrian speaking therapist in any given country or city in the
Mhm.
United States, right? So
Mhm.
the fact that you were able to provide like a group setting for these
Mhm.
women to be able to speak in their own language, feel safe, feel connected. I know that's
Mhm.
another thing that's been brought up when we talk about the therapeutic model, that
Mhm.
if the therapist and the client don't have some similarities, there's often like a resistance for the client to release and speak freely.
Absolutely.
They don't feel comfortable talking about things if they don't feel that they don't have something in common with the therapist they're working with. So I
Mhm.
feel like you orchestrated that beautifully in that you were able to provide them the same modality basically, but without the structure of traditional therapy. It was more like a group therapy.
Right, yeah. And I love that you're touching on that because a lot of my academic work is about this, how do we heal trauma within different societies and different communities. And unfortunately, when people are coming to America, we use this Western therapy model as the gold standard, by which all else deviates. And I think that that is really damaging for people
Yeah.
that need something else, right? So for a lot of these refugees that I had interviewed, when I would talk to them, and, part of the touch points of coming to the United States is doing things like, mental health checkup and cultural orientation and all of these things as like integration services. But when we would talk about things like therapy, they would be like, well, I went to one session, it feels like a job. Obviously, it is a job for the
Mhm.
therapist. I don't feel like they care about me. I could
Yeah.
barely, we could barely understand each other. And then they gave me suggestions that were not necessarily in line with the way that I would have healed, right? This is
Mhm.
not the way that they approach trauma is very different. We know this with, Native American communities. We know this within the Black community. We know this within the African community, right? Like the way that they approach trauma healing is very different. You have some people that, um, Yeah, I think it was Native American community, and I thought this was really beautiful. And when I was reading about trauma healing different communities, which is they would basically, do some sort of ceremony where they're throwing the trauma into the river, and the river is carrying that trauma
Mm,
away as this kind of closure situation. But the point being that for them, it wasn't talk therapy, right? For a lot
mhm,
of the Syrian refugees that I had interviewed, they leaned very heavily on their faith, and they were like, the words that they would use, the themes that would come up where this was a test. This was their reliance on God, their understanding that God is, seeing everything that's happening, that there's,
mm,
this justice from a higher power was very, I think, validating for them. And it was so much more validating than talk therapy would have been. And it
mm.
was a lot more comforting to them. So I think it's really important that we're able to acknowledge different people's forms, and be able to respond in that way, because it's a lot more helpful, to the so that's something that I do heavily focus on in my academic research.
So are you still in academics? Are you still, like,
Mhm.
teaching or writing
Yeah.
research papers? Wow.
Yeah, so I am a sociologist by training, and I currently teach social psychology at the university in Florida, and a lot of my research is on collective trauma, social trauma, collective healing within community. I believe that healing happens within community. Again, a lot of trauma research shows that the most important thing for somebody who's been through trauma is this validation from somebody else, being held, being in a holding space, right? And we see this in collective this societies as well, where healing happens within family, within community, within prayer spaces, within whatever the holding space is, that helps people get through. And we're social beings, right? I don't we weren't really meant to go through this alone.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of the work that I do focuses on that as it intersects with identity and belonging, and what it means to belong.
Wow, yeah, I think that's such a crucial piece that is currently lacking or missing completely from a lot of the
Mhm.
therapeutic spaces is
Yeah.
the flexibility. Like,
Mhm.
just for example, trying to find an EMDR therapist that will work in
Mhm.
person where I live, it's very hard. I think there's only 1 or 2 in the area, and then they become booked up. So, just as an example, if you can't find and EMDR is widely practiced, it's widely accepted. It's not like a fringe form of therapy. So
Mhm.
I could see how people may really struggle to find a way in. They may want to get help and may want to work on healing their depression or their anxiety or their trauma,
Right.
but they may not be able to connect with the system that exists currently. Do you
Mhm.
find that I know um, online groups like Reddit threads or Facebook groups, do you find that people connecting in those groups are benefiting from those type of things? Because I know that it's an easy way for people to tap into others that are having the same experience, but I question whether or not it actually helps or if we're
Mhm.
just sitting there complaining together, right?
Yeah. I think that's a really good question. And I would say that for a lot of the people that I was working with, they really relied heavily, maybe not so much on Reddit threads and whatnot, but like WhatsApp groups of other
Yeah,
people that they had been connecting with, that had gone through a similar experience. I think it's always really helpful to connect with
yeah,
people that have gone through a similar experience because you get that wisdom from somebody who's potentially, past the stage that you are in, right? And that's why groups like AA groups and other kinds of focus groups are helpful because you get to hear from other people, you get their wisdom, and you get to feel like you're not alone, right? A big part of
yeah,
this is this feeling like, oh, I'm the only person that must be experiencing this. I'm the only, why is my depression not getting better? Why is my anxiety not getting better? I'm having a hard time finding schools for my kids. Whatever the situation is,
right.
there is somebody who has been through it. There is somebody who can help you along, and people really benefit from community support. Community support's huge. I would say for sure though, the depends on who's in that
Mhm,
group, obviously, because it can go either way. It can be damaging if it's somebody that's not able to hold the space properly, if it's somebody that's not able to hold that vulnerability and bear witness and validate the experience that you've been through, right? Because it's a lot more damaging for somebody who's been through trauma to be gaslit, right? Or to
Yeah.
be told that they potentially didn't experience it in the way that they did, or it couldn't be so bad, or you're so lucky because now you're in America and you're safe.
Yeah.
And while the trauma didn't stop when the war ended, the trauma is still going on when these people, came to whatever country they went to, and
It's
then they faced
compounding.
racism, right? And it's compounded trauma, exactly. And so it definitely matters what group, but group healing is very powerful.
Yeah, I think that's the tricky thing. What I've seen with these groups, especially if there isn't a certified trained leader of
Mhm.
some type to kind of put
Mhm.
some boundaries up around the group to make sure it does maintain a safe space, which
Mhm.
obviously you were able to create with your groups.
Mhm.
So if there's anybody out there listening and they're
Mhm.
trying to like be a moderator of a group or they're
Mhm.
hosting groups, what
Yeah.
are some things you would recommend, like these are core foundational things for people who are doing group work to create a space, like, because that's what I have seen in these groups is that you'll get
Mhm.
some really great beautiful things happening and people really
Mhm.
connecting and you can tell they're supporting each other, and then 5 seconds later it's like somebody's off the rails and they're shaming each other
Mhm.
and they're like
Yeah.
minimizing and they're doing all these harmful things.
Mhm.
So if you
Yeah.
want to share, since you have such experience with the groups, what people should
Mhm.
know if they are joining a group, like if they're
Mhm.
seeing red flags, those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's it's always difficult. We're human, right? Like humans
Mhm.
make you'd never know what to expect. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like we're all capable. And the thing is, when you do see people that come with trauma, the reality is anything can surface at any time. And understanding that some reactions can be obviously a trauma response
Mhm.
help people. So normally when we start any kind of group work, we have just house rules, right? Like that will announce at the beginning, respecting each other's opinions, validating each other's opinions, what things feel good, what things don't feel good, what comment might feel okay, what comment might not feel okay. Because I don't like calling people out
Mhm.
if they're talking and if they're having a vulnerable moment. So I find it so much more helpful to always lay the ground rules at the very beginning,
Yeah.
right? And this is with anything, right? It's when I'm teaching in a class, it's when I'm, conducting some sort of leadership exercise. When we start with the ground rules, we're a lot more clear on what the expectations are instead of singling people out and making them feel bad. And then the other thing is because I've seen people responding from a place of hurt,
Mhm.
oftentimes I will, and it's very obvious to me that some responses that can be harsh, some things that may come up are a trauma response, and we'll sit down and we'll talk about it. But I generally have not had these issues, which I'm really grateful for. And I
That's
think
great.
a big help was going through,
Right.
the ground rules and what to expect and what things I would not, be okay with and what things I would. And I say this again, even in my right? When I'm teaching at the university, because I'm a sociologist, and by definition, we're going to have controversial conversations, and
Yeah.
not everybody's coming from the same place, and clearly, I have a marked identity, and so I tell them at the very beginning, my ground rule is respect, and if I feel
Right.
like a conversation is getting heated or there's no respect within the conversation, I'm just going to end the conversation,
Nice.
and that usually helps.
Yeah, that's great. Those are great tips. I think, like you said, what I have seen a lot of times is the person who's upset is a lot projecting their own issues onto the other person. And so if you can
Absolutely.
automatically go in and be like, you know what, not everything that's going to come at me is actually
Mhm.
about me.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
can kind of neutralize like, okay, they're having a
Mhm.
thing. This isn't really about me and what I just said. It
Mhm.
might be about them.
Right.
But yeah, so it sounds like you have made some progress with the group that you originally had, and then you moved to
Mhm.
Florida, and now
Mhm.
are the women that you were originally working with still creating the fashion pieces? They're just where they live and you're in Florida, like you're shipping things back and forth, or how does that work?
So when I had left, I tried to keep the line the way that it was, and it became really difficult because the point of it was that we were together in a room. The point of
Mhm.
it was this art therapy that was happening. And so I was really grateful because so one of them actually ended up moving to a different state. Another woman got a job. Another woman retired because she was starting to have issues with her vision. So it really naturally ended. Like it was the most
Nice.
And for a full year, I was waiting. I even had my husband go to Florida first for a year, and I stayed that extra year because I wanted them. I gave them a whole year, right, to be like, okay, this is going to end, and we need to find jobs, and we need to move on. And so I was really grateful that all of them were able to find different jobs. And so the way it ended was very, very natural.
Nice. So the fashion line that you currently have, who is producing that and how does that work?
So I'm also part of a resettlement agency down here in Florida, and and part of their agency is that they have this this program where they train women to sew. And most of these women, they used to sew in their home country, which is why this is it's very in line with what we do at Blue Meets Blue. A big part, and I don't think I touched on this, is that I really wanted these women to feel empowered
Mm,
because they are working in their skill set, right? A lot of refugees that come to the US, to wherever, their skill set does not translate and it's not even recognized, right? And
right.
they're given jobs that, potentially don't need paperwork, they're not getting paid
Mm,
well, all of that. So they're being taken advantage of. And so I really wanted to make sure that these women had that prior skill set because it was very empowering. They felt so confident. They felt like they
mhm.
were really excited to share this part of them
Oh,
and
nice.
for that to be recognized and validated. And work is dignity, and so to be able to work in something that you're passionate about and something that you are excited about is really really helpful. So a lot of it translated very much seamlessly as I was starting with the resettlement agency here in Florida. And so the women that I've been working with have also been sewing and doing alterations and all kinds of really cool projects on the side. So now that we are relaunching in January, I've been working with them for the past 4 or 5 years on different projects. And now it's going to be this seamless transition into Blue Meets Blue.
Nice. Yeah, I did look at the website. The pieces are gorgeous. They're very
Oh,
beautiful. You
thank
can tell
you.
that they're not just like a t-shirt and jeans or whatever that you
Right.
would
Yeah,
buy.
no,
They're very
yeah.
unique pieces that you would buy for like a special occasion or a wedding or something.
Yeah.
And I can, kind of envision like all the hard work that went into
Mhm.
making something like that. And I noticed
Mhm.
like one of them said like custom order. So are
Yeah.
you guys taking people's measurements? Like, are these
Yes.
items very okay? So that's cool.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to
So
purchase it, yeah.
exactly. So that line is the old line. The website is going to go through uh, under renovation soon. But that collection that's coming out in January is going to be using Syrian brocade, which I'm really excited about. And it is also elevated evening wear. We are known for our A-line skirts because they have pockets in them and they're super
Mhm.
exciting. And then we have these really beautiful pencil skirts, and obviously we're using the same fabric for, but what's cool, like I said, this part of the slow fashion sustainability is that we do not make inventory. And I do want the piece to fit beautifully, right? And so at some level, and our clients have always appreciated this, is that you'll send in your waist measurements and how long you want the skirt based on the heels that you're going to wear. And you get a skirt that's really, fit to your size and to your measurements. And it's not just your small, medium, large.
Right.
And once the fabric's out, the fabric's out. So it's also pretty exclusive, small inventory, and we take orders yeah, made to order. So that's going to be coming out in January. And this time we're really excited because we're also launching an accessory line. So we
Oh,
also have these beautiful brocade evening clutches that are going to be
oh,
stunning,
nice.
and then these Syrian wooden clutches as well. So when I
Wow.
was in Syria this summer, and this was part of what made this trip so incredible, is I was able to go to the factory, right? Like there's no middleman, there's none of, and it matters to me that also the factories over there are getting supported because
Right.
80% of the fabric industry got destroyed during the war
Yeah.
intentionally. And so there's only one more person that makes brocade over there by hand.
Wow.
And I got to meet him and interview him, and it was such a sad moment because you kind of feel like history is just vanishing in front
Mhm.
of your eyes. But I'm really excited because the bracelet, I mean the
Wooden
The
clutches?
the clutches are from there. The fabric is from there, and then the fabric is it came here, and now we're going to be making it in Florida, and so it's this full circle moment.
Wow, that's really beautiful. And I know there was a group that I was donating to and following that was working with Syrian refugees. And
Hmm.
just even a couple months ago, they were still delivering food and
Yeah.
water, especially to women who'd lost their spouse. So they're basically single mothers with children. Um,
Hmm.
and it's really heartbreaking because you can see the pictures, like the buildings are all crumbled and they're
Yeah.
having to live in like half your walls missing kind of thing. So I know
That's
that that's one of the things is like when we're talking about helping people, it's not
mhm.
just like, oh, well, they can just go home. Like you said, there's
Yeah.
not really a home to go back to, or their entire city may be gone, or,
Right.
all those difficult obstacles that they're going to face. Um,
Hmm.
so when you're talking about in 2025, there was a change in the political environment. So
Hmm.
is there now like a rebuilding? Like what's the future for these women if they wanted to return to Syria, or do they plan to stay in America? Like what's their plan?
So I think, like you said, at some level, a lot of the people that left were people that had no other option, right? They lost their homes, they lost everything that they had. So it's almost like they don't have anything to go back to. And
Mm,
then the war started in 2011 and we're in 2025. So a lot
yeah,
of people, if they had children, let's say 2012, their children, all they know is America, right? This is their home, this is their country, or Europe or Germany or whatever, wherever, Canada. And so at some level, and these people have been either trying to get to a destination country, right? Because oftentimes they're
mhm,
in limbo waiting for the interview
right.
process, and they're just in holding countries forever within refugee camps. And so then they finally make it, right? Um, I don't, it's very difficult to then imagine going all the way back to nothing, right? Some people
Yeah,
finally got a job. They finally got their kids in the school system. They finally were able to like start over. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to imagine that journey back home, especially for people who have lost everything. And then don't forget, a lot of people are going back to trauma, right? They were going
right.
back to the last place where the trauma happened. And so it's not something people want to revisit, right? A lot of people lost all their family. They lost entire generations of family. They've seen their family get killed in front of them. And
Yeah.
so, that obviously breaks you in a way that is very challenging to what it means to go back home.
Oh,
And unfortunately, we're still, like you said, seeing this in Gaza. We're seeing this in just so many places around the world, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. And
yeah.
I worry about future generations. But I think this is why conversations are so important. I think teaching our children about what it means to be a refugee, teaching them about the journey, teaching them about how to be with your new refugee friends that are going to be at your school
Yeah.
is really important. Education matters, and talking with people matters. I know when I was working with Blue Meets Blue back in Chicago, again, one of the things was I really wanted to dispel a lot of these stereotypes that people had about what it meant to be a refugee and
Mm,
refugees coming to our country and living off of our tax dollars. And I'm like, you do understand that within 6 months they have to pay back the price of the ticket of coming here,
wow.
right? Like these people are not living off your tax dollars, nor do they want a handout. They actually want to
Right,
work,
right.
and they're doing jobs that most people are not doing.
Yeah.
So it's very unfortunate, and the thing is, what we often fail to realize is most of these people are parents just like us, right? And so one of the women, and I tell this story a lot just because of how simple it is, because I think we just take these things for granted. um with a second year of working with Blue Meets Blue, was starting to make money, and she was really excited to now be able to send cupcakes for her son's birthday party, just like a class celebration. And it wasn't something that she would have done the year before because they really were saving money, and they had so many bills, and they got to pay rent, and they got to figure out life, right? This new life. And so she was finally able to do it that year, and she was just so excited that her child did not have to feel left out, right? That
I
he
love
was
that.
able to participate in something that everybody took for granted, and everybody in the
Yeah.
class, it's, typical, you send cupcakes for your child's birthday. And I was like, my goodness, it's these little moments
Yeah.
these little moments of, humanity that we often forget, that these are moms that want their children to do well, right? These are
Right.
parents that they come to America and you ask them, what are your dreams for the future? What do you hope for the future? And they'll tell you, I don't have any dreams for myself. I just want my kids to be okay. I just
Wow.
want a better future for my kids. I want them to be safe. And as parents, I think that's something we can all relate to. I don't care where any of us are from. That is not something that is so far-fetched for us to understand. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of really good points of what I see now unfolding in the States is this with ICE and the traumatic stuff that is constantly occurring in front of our
Mhm.
eyes. Um, is that like people will say, "Oh, just go back to where you came from." Like literally, what is there to go back to? It's rubble.
Right.
There's nothing for them to return to most frequently.
100%.
There's the infrastructure, the water, like the sewage treatment, all those things have been destroyed, right? And so
Right.
what are they supposed to go back to? Um,
Mhm. In
I'm
addition to,
trying
and
not
I'm
to
so
get emotional.
no, in
Yeah,
addition,
it's
I
really
appreciate you bringing that up, and I'm gonna try not to get too political because I know you're putting this on YouTube. But in addition to the fact that when I would talk to refugees, and they would be like, I never wanted to leave my home, right? Like, this isn't a choice that I made where I just woke up one day and I was like, hey, let me get on a boat and try to make it to America and potentially die getting there. But,
yeah,
this sounds like a fun adventure. No, nobody wanted to leave their home. Nobody wanted to watch their family get killed, right? And then
yeah,
you've got a lot of people that will say, if there isn't any interference with our countries, we would not have had to leave.
right.
Where else are we going to go? Like, bombing our countries, and there's
Yeah,
nothing
exactly.
that we can do. So it makes absolutely no sense, and it's such ignorance.
Yeah.
I wrote this book, a kid's book about humanitarianism, and this call for children to understand what it means to be a humanitarian,
Mm,
and to parents too. And I think that this is such an important conversation. This understanding that to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, right? Like to be deeply
yeah,
empathetic and to deeply think about what it means to have lost your home, what it means to not have, right, a home to go back. What does that even mean? Like, I mean, our kids could not imagine a life where, they had to pack all of their belongings in a backpack and go, right? Like that's not even in the realm of, I
right.
couldn't even imagine it, right? And so I think that for adults, probably the message is a lot more important and a lot more timely to return to that empathy, like return
Yeah,
to what it means to be a human. We're all sharing this world and this planet together, right? And I think that we have gone so far from what it means to be human.
yeah,
The fact that we have debates about, if it's wrong to kill children, the fact that we have debates about that to me is just mind blowing.
it
I
is.
I don't know how this happened and why we have gone so far, um, from our innate understanding of kindness, and it just breaks my heart every day.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of us struggling right now, like, we feel very helpless, like, it's our
Mhm.
government that we give our tax dollars to
Yeah.
doing these things, and then we're
Yeah.
like, "Well, how do we stop? How do what act of protest can I take
Mhm.
to stop this when it feels like nothing that we do will matter," right? There's a lot of
Mhm.
what I hear from people being like, "Well, there's no, there's nothing you do, they're just gonna do whatever they do anyway," but I don't think that's
Mhm.
like you said, Syria was in a civil war. There was definitely two
Right.
sides fighting, and we're kind of seeing that fracture happening in the US right
Mhm.
now, where it's a very divisive
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing I was thinking as you were talking, it's like, you know, these children, this is all they've ever known.
Mhm.
This is now their home. They are
Mhm.
acclimating, they've learned English, they're having the same experience in school as the other children. And so to like just send them back it would be so traumatic all over again,
Of
right? Like
course. Yeah.
it's just
And
so
for them, this is their home. It's like you're picking them up out of the only place that they just came to this earth, right? Like this is actually their home. So picking them up and throwing them there, they're like, what? Like I've never been to this place, right? So it's also this very like tone deaf a comment that I've heard so many times, and I'm just like, I don't understand how people think,
Yeah.
truly.
I agree, and it's just so frustrating and so sad for me. I appreciate that you brought up the YouTube algorithm possibly because that was one of the goals that I set out for the podcast this year was to actively become more political and talk more
Mm,
about these things because I
I
think it
love
is so
that.
important that we not
Yeah.
just turn a blind eye to it. We have so
Mm,
much privilege
yeah.
currently for
Hmm.
now
For
that
now.
we can pretend that these things aren't happening and we can look the
Absolutely.
other way, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to remain that way if we keep putting
No.
our head in the sand and if we don't actively say stuff. So
Mm.
we'll see as I push the limits with YouTube what gets to
Yeah,
stay.
good luck with that. I've heard
Um,
Rumble is like the one that's like, you can talk and say whatever you want on there. So I don't know if you've
yeah,
explored that
I
one. But I want
start.
to say that I really appreciate that you are doing that because I'm a sociologist, right? At in Florida, so obviously take that as
Yeah,
you will with
I
all
know
the
Florida's been like all over
yeah.
the news with DeSantis.
Yeah, exactly. And I have been so disappointed with the sociology department because all we've ever talked about, right, before Gaza is oppression and how oppression's awful and how historical genocides have been awful. And, from a safe distance, people are very comfortable speaking out, right? But when it's currently happening, you have tone deafening silence, and it's just like or deafening silence that you're like I'm so confused because we were just talking about Ukraine, we were just talking about how things are not okay. But it's been very disappointing as a
Mm,
sociologist, and it's made me question everything that I
yeah,
have been doing. Like, what is the point of doing this sociological research and talking about this stuff just so that we can what, like, record it for the archives? I'm confused.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
for people within my department to not, potentially one, not speak, two, not teach, right? And we are being almost asked like, what's in your syllabus?
Yes,
This is not freedom of speech, right? How are
no,
we going to give our students critical thinking skills if we're not even going to be talking about what's happening, and we're going to be afraid of being, and we are being silenced, right? And
yes,
that to me is, and then for
yeah,
people that come from the Middle East, that is offensive, right?
yeah,
And I've had people that I've interviewed they've been so, like, this concept of social media too, and these echo chambers and these they feel like their pain has been turned into content at some level.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like the Middle East is suffering, people are suffering, and it's almost like it's something for people to consume. And there's this cognitive dissonance that starts happening when you're doom scrolling on social media and you get your first, video of some guy making spaghetti, and the next video of like a cute cat video, and then people getting pulled out from under the rubble, and then you move on, and our brains were not meant to handle
no,
that. I don't think we were meant to, it becomes this very flat experience, right?
yeah,
And studies have shown, like, okay, if you go to a wedding, you experience full joy, right? If you go to a funeral, you experience full grief. Here, it's just becoming this flattened experience where you're numb to it. So you've got these kids too, which I just don't know how they're handling. But you've got these like fake empaths that are walking around that think they're empathetic, but then are they really? And
right.
they're just consuming, doom scrolling this social media content, and they've just become numb to it. They've become numb to the suffering of people. Because it's just like quick, turn. And so, the people that are over there are like, well, we just feel like our pain is content. And it's so dehumanizing.
Yeah, yeah. It's true. I think because and I've heard a lot of people talk about this in this space, it's like, how do you process what we are observing? Like,
Yeah.
we are literally observing a genocide, and what are our brains literally can't, like you said, it's like kitty cat video, genocide. And it's like
Right.
your brain starts to be like, I literally will start crying. And I'm like, well, now I
Yeah.
have to take care of my kid. I can't be
Hmm.
watching people die in front of me
Yeah.
well, I have to live my life. And it becomes this
Hmm.
thing of like, how do you
Hmm.
process it? And then I think the biggest thing for us Americans who have citizenship and can risk getting arrested is that
Hmm.
we do something about it. We
Yeah.
make meaning out of it. Like you said at the
Hmm.
very beginning, you take this experience and you make meaning out of it. Not that, oh, poor them, this is so
Right.
sad, but what are you going to do with that? Like, are
Yeah.
you to email your senator, call your congressman? Are you going to protest? Are you
Right.
going to donate to somebody who's giving food in Gaza?
Mhm.
Like, what is it that you want to do with your pain and
Yeah.
make it meaning? I think that's so important right now because
Yeah.
it is all too easy for us to just keep scrolling
Yeah.
and feel like, well, that's not here. There's nothing I
Mm.
can do. Um,
Exactly.
and
Right.
I think the Islamophobia on the other side is becoming like at a fever pitch. I'm seeing stuff that I feel like this is fully insane. I cannot believe that these people are posting these kinds of things.
Mhm.
Um, and there's like this underlying fear of like if we allow these people to live in our society, will
Mhm.
the scales will tip and suddenly our whole society will be Islamic, right? And I'm like, that's
Mhm.
obviously not going to happen. It's just,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of fear that's being fed to people in the media and by
Yeah.
politicians
Yeah.
and by these right-wing talking heads too. And so
Yeah.
it feels very I get so angry about it every
Yeah.
single day. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this anger?
Mhm.
What is it that I can personally do
Mhm.
today, every day moving forward to make an actual change? Because you're making an actual change by helping the people that are here and giving them skills and helping them acclimate and, have an income. And income is so huge. We were watching that show Mo on Netflix, where it's like,
Mhm.
if you don't have your papers, you can't get a real job. So how are you supposed to live? Like, yeah,
Right.
you
It's a
get to
vicious
come
cycle.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like I don't have money for gas in my car kind of thing. So,
Mhm.
if aside from purchasing your beautiful clothing or things like that, do you have, recommendations for people who are just like, what do I do in this situation to help
Yeah.
some, but also to like make a change?
So first of all, I want to appreciate everything that you just said. I think it is so important that I think people don't understand how powerful their voice is, right? And people are afraid to speak out. And the thing is, I think that shows, what we are afraid of losing, right? A lot of people are afraid to lose a job. People are afraid to lose their lives. Like, you've got this very like opposite ends of and so I think for the people who like yourself that are like, listen, I'm American, I'm a citizen, I'm not afraid to speak out. I try to decolonize my syllabus when I can. I try to still, I'm like, I'm still going to talk about it. What are they going to do? Fire me? Okay. Like at the end
Yeah,
of the day, and these are my people,
yeah,
and I would do this for anybody's people because I'm human. So I think returning to our humanity is number one, and really, really remembering and putting yourself in people's shoes. If this was happening to you and in your country and to your children, wouldn't you want people to talk? Wouldn't you want people to stand up for you? Wouldn't you want people on the other side of the world to protest? What have we been teaching our children
yeah.
about all the greats in history, right? All the greats, like,
Mhm.
we talk about Malcolm X and we talk about Mandela and we talk about, and we talk about all the things that they did, right? All of them stood up for peace and they stood up for humanity and they stood up for, collective healing and all of these things. And now that we have that opportunity, I mean, this meme has been posted so many times. Um, you always talk about what you would have done if you were alive during the Holocaust. You're
Mhm.
doing it now, right?
Right.
And I think that people need to, first of all, step back and be, let's ask ourselves, is it we don't care about them because they're different than us? We don't care
Mm,
about them because we don't care about their humanity? We don't care about them because we don't, we don't want them to succeed? Or is it because we're so comfortable, because we don't want to lose our job? Whatever the situation
right.
is, just this understanding that if this was happening to me, how would I want the world to respond? If this was
Yeah.
happening to my child, how would I want the world to respond? That's number one. Number two, I think we again have a lot of these. What really bothers me, and I think people need to ask themselves, right? Am I posting this? Reposting to feel better about myself because I want to repost because that's the only thing that I can do and I feel like I'm doing something. Okay, awesome. Repost, right? If that's the only thing you can do, repost. If the only thing you can do is have a difficult conversation at the Thanksgiving table, do that,
Right.
with a family member. Conversation matters, but you've got a lot of people that will repost and be like, okay, I did my thing, I'm good, like i've
Mhm.
i've done it, right? Or people that will treat it like a campaign, almost like, okay, how many likes can I get and how many shares can
No.
I get and how many reshares can I get? And that is where I think a lot of these Middle Eastern people feel like their lives have been put out as almost like it's been reduced to clips, right?
Right.
And these are full humans. Like these are people with lives and, joy and memory and pain and suffering. And it's not, so it feels dehumanizing at some level when it's like, okay, let's find a way that we can engage our audience. And
Yeah.
people see that, people, understand that, but just kind of trying to not be tone deaf in the world that we live in, right? You still have
Yeah.
influencers that will go out and be like, get ready with me, and I'm like, what are we getting ready for here? Like people are,
Yeah.
you probably have people that are living in Gaza right now that are following your feed, and you're sitting here posting, lavish spa retreats, and like
Mhm.
what are we doing here? So I think there's a lot that we can do collectively, and just kind of going back to that kindness and that humanity that we all have, and just putting ourselves in people's shoes and thinking about what we would want for them to do if we were going through the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, especially because I think people don't often think of like, especially if you're listening to any form of, like, standard media outlets where they're
Mhm.
demonizing immigrants and
Yeah.
demonizing refugees and those kinds of things. But
Mhm.
most of the time, like you said, these are single women, these are mothers, they have children. They aren't just coming here because it's a fun time and I just wanna go
Right.
be an American. They didn't want
Mhm.
to leave where they were at, and
Yeah.
now they're forced to. And, obviously, like you
Mhm.
said, they're not just coming to America, they're going to Germany or they're going to other countries that are
Yeah.
taking in people. And so having that
Mhm.
compassion and that empathy, I think, is gonna go a long way.
Yeah.
Um, if unfortunately, my community, we don't have a large influx. We have Micronesians and people coming from the Marshall Islands because
Mhm.
the U.S. blew them up and
Right.
we tainted their water and ruined their
Yeah.
land, and so now they come here. But
Mhm.
yeah, the compassion and empathy and kind of giving them a beat. This was a
Yeah.
conversation I had with someone who I do not agree with them politically, and they're like,
Mhm.
they're not acclimating and da 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 da. I was like, give them a fucking minute. Like,
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
them a minute. It takes
Yeah.
a while to learn another language.
Yeah.
Like, just thinking about like the road rules, those lights, they're green, red, yellow light. That's not
It's a
the same in
culture
every
shock.
country.
It's a
Yes,
culture shock. It's a full
it's a
culture
huge,
shock.
yeah,
And I
it's a
love that
huge
you said
transition.
that, because a lot of people also don't realize that it is a trauma response. People coming from a different country, right, wanting to hold on to their identity and their culture when they have already lost so much. They've
Yes.
lost their home, they've lost family members, they've lost everything that they've ever known. And now they're being asked to speak English because they're in America, right?
Yeah.
Or now they're
Yeah.
being asked to assimilate. And it's like, what's wrong with me and my identity that I have to shed parts so that you can
Yeah.
accept me, right?
Yeah.
That's a form of oppression, and it's a form of, and people don't realize that it is a trauma response, because in a place that is so foreign, I want to hang on to what little bit I
Mhm.
have left, which is my
Yes.
language, my food, my music, right? I want my
Yeah.
kids to speak my language because they're going to lose that language. And then the next
Yes.
generation, they're not even going to be able to speak that language, right? And people don't, I mean, again, I don't understand when people lost that humanity. I really don't.
Yeah, we see that with the Hawaiian culture because when they were colonized and were invaded and the state was taken over, the language was banned. And
Hmm.
now we see a resurgence where there's Hawaiian, there's charter schools that teach specifically all the
Yeah.
where I'm like blanking out the textbooks and everything Hawaiian. It's all taught in Hawaiian. And
Nice.
so that's what happens when we erase it. There's a pop back up
Mhm.
generations later of like, why was this taken from me? And we see this with the
Sure.
Native Americans too.
Yeah.
Everything was stripped from them
Mhm.
in their own land. And
Of course.
so,
Boarding
like,
schools, language, all of it. Of course.
like you said, having that ounce of compassion, and like one of the things that I am grateful for technology is the translate feature now, where
Mm.
you have your
Yeah.
phone, if you don't understand what they're saying, click the translate and you can help them,
Yeah.
or to them in whatever
Mhm.
way you can,
Mhm.
especially if they're struggling because,
Yeah.
I feel like how traumatic would that be just to be, even if you weren't a refugee, just to go somewhere and you don't know how to communicate with people, you
I
don't know how
went
to
to
ask for things.
France and I wanted to cry. I was like, and like I don't speak French, right? And everything there, the train system, everything, and I'm just like I feel so lost, right?
Yeah,
And I mean, we are used to English being prevalent everywhere, and this is part of this entitled, right? Like that,
yeah,
speak English, right? It
yeah,
should be available everywhere. It's a world language. And I'm just sitting there going, I don't know where to go. I don't know, right from left here. And it was so disorienting. And again, I give this example in my class all the time where I'm like, imagine being someone that came to a new country that doesn't speak the language, that doesn't understand. I mean, you go into a supermarket and a lot of we take them grocery shopping a couple of times because the plethora of items that we have in a grocery store is just so overwhelming, right?
yeah,
For these families that are coming from a different country that have different items that use different produce and different things.
yeah.
And it's
Or even being able to just find the things they're looking for. They may only be looking for a handful of things, and does the
correct.
store even carry it? Like,
Sure. Yeah.
maybe that store doesn't, and so, yeah,
Mhm.
I think there's so much compassion and empathy we could have
Mhm.
for these for people that are not like us, and instead of
Mhm.
other being like, "Oh, they're weird," or "I don't like that," or I'm afraid that their culture is gonna
Yeah.
override my culture," and that is
Mhm.
not the case we see most of the times with people, with refugees coming into other countries.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I know we're almost out of time. Do you? I know your website is. I think it's Blue Meets Blue. Is that what I googled and then it came up?
bluemeetsblue.com. Yep. And Instagram, Blue Meets Blue. That's the best place to connect with me. Yeah.
And your children's book. Where could people purchase that if they wanted to?
So it's called A Kid's Book About Humanitarianism, and that is available online where books are sold, Barnes and Noble, Target, and then I recommend for any parents, educators, librarians to visit the A Kid's Book About website. The founder, Jelani Memory, started in 2019 in response to the George Floyd incident, or what happened, the murder. And he started his first book was a kid's book about racism. After that, another person wrote a kid's book about systemic racism, and he had partnered with people
Oh,
in
nice.
different industries to write these books because children are ready to have these conversations. Not only are they ready, they're probably more ready than adults are, right? Because children understand. So my book, a kid's book about humanitarianism, um, I feel like children understand it very instinctively, right? Like kids don't make things complicated the way we do as adults because they don't have politics and they don't have that exposure to the awful things that, happen. And so, they see a kid crying, it's instinctive. I go, I give the kid a hug, I ask if you're okay, I share my lollipop. It's not that
Yeah,
difficult, right? We complicate things. So, what I like with my book to reframe what a humanitarian is, and I want them to know that they can be a humanitarian at any age. You don't have to be old. You don't have to be powerful. You don't have to be super wealthy. You don't have to work for a great NGO. You don't have to do medical missions abroad. You can be a humanitarian just by standing up against a bully in school or by
mhm,
making blessing bags and passing them out to the houseless on traffic stops. And
yeah,
so that those books, I recommend them to any educator or parent. A huge collection, so many topics. There's a kid's book about bullying, about oppression,
mhm,
about divorce, about war.
yeah.
So on their website is a kidsbookabout.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Shahid, for coming on today. I appreciate you sharing your information. I had no idea that you were such a wealth of knowledge. I thought it was just a fashion brand when we first started talking, so we got to dive into some fun rabbit holes. But um,
Oh,
thank you so much, and thank everybody for listening, and have a great week, and we'll see you back next time.
thanks for having